Hi, folks. So I get questions from time to time about, or exclamations from people about how I managed to read so many books. How do I fit it in? I have what's a fairly busy job. I've got a large-ish family. And occasionally I get comments from folks who are extremely skeptical and just don't believe that I'm reading them at all, that I'm lying, for example, to get clicks. Or for the benefit of my YouTube channel or whatever. And actually, they don't happen very often, but when I do get those, I do find that quite jarring. And I can assure you, it's categorically not true. And if it was, I just wouldn't see the point of it. I have no agenda or can see no benefit of fibbing to you about what I haven't read. So it's always my aim to be completely transparent about it. I always read a lot when I was a kid and as a young person before I had much in the way of responsibility. So I suppose I am wired that way. It was just how I chose to spend my time as a kid. I enjoyed, and still do, losing myself in a book. I was the nerdy kid in English class in, what would it be now, year 8, second year seniors for me, where I would take in like The Heretics of June, sort of 500-600 page book, and other people were bringing in the Diary of Adrian Mole, age 13 and 3/4, or something equally kind of juvenile, as I saw it. And it also happens that the things that took my fancy when I was that sort of age were often, not exclusively so, but often science fiction, with quite a sprinkling of fantasy and a horror, the likes of Stephen King and so on. But there are other things too, kind of thrillers and Cold War thrillers and so on and so forth that I enjoy to read. But obviously your responsibilities as time goes on mount up, and certainly I can understand that it feels like you have less and less time to do what you want of any kind, never mind reading. I fairly quickly had a young family. We have 4 kids and busy and occasionally stressful job. And so time for leisure in general was just limited, or so it felt. And reading just became something that I might do if I could keep my eyes open for 15 minutes before going to bed, or maybe I'd get through a few books whilst collapsed, exhausted on vacation. So those might be described as the lean years for my reading. And I didn't keep a record back then of what I was reading, but I would guess I averaged around 15 books a year back then. And I suppose a few things have happened in recent years that have made it possible for me to significantly increase that rate from 15 to a much larger number in a given year. And I can reveal to you that there is no great secret to that. I haven't discovered a way to scan a page faster than the next person. I don't have any magic tricks. There is no silver bullet. For me, the reality is the only way to read more books is to decide you want to read more books. The limiting factor is how much time you choose or are able to dedicate to that thing, to reading. Stating the bleeding obvious, there are only so many hours in a day. And I suppose I'm fortunate now that my kids are all older. They're mostly into their 20s, and my youngest is heading for 18. And to be frank, they're much more demanding these days on my wallet than they are on my time. And that definitely helps. It makes it more possible, I think. Yeah, although having said that, I do know just through BookTube, I know of several other booktubers, not necessarily relating to science fiction, that have young families and still get through quite the volume of books, and in some cases way more than I do. So that in itself isn't necessarily a blocker or even an excuse. So for me, it was really a case of deciding to make reading an actual hobby, and that's really helped me. And the YouTube channel is an overlapping part of that, and one does feed the other to an extent. It's a bit of a virtuous cycle. But it boils down to I just choose to spend time and money doing it, the reading that is. I don't smoke, I don't drink that much, I don't go out that often, I don't watch much in the way of TV. So that presents quite an opportunity as far as spending time doing reading instead. During the week, I usually get up at around 6 o'clock in the mornings, and not outrageously early. But I aim to be. I mostly work from home, and I aim to be in my home office / library by about 7:30 in the morning. So with some chores done and a bit of breakfast eaten. So 7:30 with the book in hand, and I aim to get 1 to 1.5 hours of reading in before I start work. It's usually between 8:30 and 9 o'clock. And then another 30 to 45 minutes at lunchtime, and perhaps on average, I would say between 1 and 2 hours, either immediately after work or later in the evening. And then at the weekend, there's often more actually going on with family or other social commitments, etc. But I do usually find even then, again, quite often early in the morning when nobody else is around, to curl up on the sofa with a book for a few hours. And fundamentally, that's it. It just adds up. And that usually lets me get through 2, sometimes 3 books in a week, depending on the length of the book and the extent to which I'm enjoying the book. And actually and it is true that some books are more of a slog than others, and that can slow you down a little bit. And actually that's one of a couple of things I think I could improve on. I know that other people that I know are much more disciplined than I am about DNFing a book if it hasn't grabbed them in the first 50, maybe 100 pages. I think that the equation that they're calculating, and quite rightly, I think, is that their time is just better spent reading the next book that they might enjoy far more. It's definitely much more efficient, and I should do it more than I do. I'm probably guilty of wanting to give a book more of a chance, erring on the side of it being more of a me thing than the book thing. But not that often, because I'm generally sort of preloading my planned TBR with books I actually want to read. So very occasionally one of those is a disappointment and much more of a slog than I was expecting it to be. Having said that, there's no magic trick to this reading business. I guess one thing that I have added to my repertoire is audiobooks. The vast majority of my reading over my life has been in physical books, and it still is. I prefer physical books, and I collect them, and my shelves are full of them. So that's normal for me, if you like. But I do, though, spend quite a lot of time out doing my other hobby, which is long distance running. So depending where I am in the training plan for a race, I spend somewhere between 4 and 10 hours a week out in all weathers training. And for several years while I was doing that, my habit was to listen to podcasts. So it wasn't a huge leap to switch instead to audiobooks. And whilst it can take quite a while to get through an audiobook, that typically means that I can get through 2 or 3 extra books a month in this way. And to make that happen, I've treated myself to an Audible subscription, just their lowest tier, which gives me access to their ever-changing library of so-called free audiobooks that are available to members. Plus, the tier I'm on gives you 1 credit a month to spend on any book that they have in their catalogue. And I'm a little bit miserly about what I choose to spend that credit on, and I've usually got a backlog of 3 or 4 credits available to spend at any one time. Sometimes I choose to spend that credit on the audiobook version of one of the books that's on my planned TBR for the month, and sometimes I use it as a way to reread something that I've enjoyed in the past but have forgotten about. Over the last couple of years, I've reread, for example, Ian Banks' Culture series via that method, and I'm presently engaged in a gradual reread of Alistair Reynolds' Revelation Space series. Or sometimes I just choose, because I happen to spot it, a book that's elsewhere on my shelves, that's not on my planned pile, but that I would like to listen to. So audiobooks are a bit of a cheat code for me. With all the running that I do, time spent in the gym so that I can be better at running, or when I'm driving, or when I'm cooking or gardening or whatever. Basically, whenever I'm on my own and doing something that doesn't require too much in the way of concentration, then I have an audiobook on. And again, that does really add up. And something else that I know makes a real difference to the quantity and quality of my reading, and I think it would to yours too, is to put the damn phone down and preferably switch it off or put it in a different room entirely. And this is something that I'm actually pretty bad at. And I do find that I get distracted or feel compelled to check my phone, to doom scroll with the neglected book still held in my hand. It's not productive. It's not adding anything to my life. And this is something that I need to work on. It would probably be a New Year's resolution for 2026. I'm absolutely certain that I could get through books more efficiently, and I think more effectively. I would get more out of it if I wasn't distracted in such a way. So there's room for improvement. But despite that distraction, in a typical month, I usually plan to read 10 books. And, I don't always get through all of those 10, but often it's more than that, with the addition of 2 or 3 audiobooks, and sometimes quite a lot more if there's a summer vacation or something. Well, obviously that doesn't happen every month, sadly. Last year, in 2024, I read roughly 145 books in total. And this year, I think I am going to beat the 150 book mark, I think. So that's it, really. That is how I amped up my reading, 10xing it from 15 books a year, roughly, to more like 150. And as I say, there is no great secret. I just choose to spend time doing it, and that's all there is to it. I hope that was useful and interesting for you. And as usual, thank you for watching. And until next time, goodbye for now.